lying silently on the soft ground, her powerful shoulders rolling. Another image of the woman popped into his head. She was walking toward him, her gemstone eyes holding him captive as her long bare legs covered the distance between them. Perspiration coated his palms, and he found himself actually reaching for her, curious to learn if that skin was as soft as it looked. Then the image was gone, and Tehya's tail was wagging, her tongue lolling out of her mouth as she bounded toward him in big, goofy hops, wanting to run and play. Mystery woman forgotten, he braced himself for impact, and a heartbeat later, wolf paws the size of his hands slammed into his chest as Tehya bathed his face with her tongue. Laughing, he ruffled his fingers through her fur and scritched behind her big ears. Sweet maker, he loved this girl. She'd come to him at the lowest point in his life, when he'd realized he had nothing to live for. Nearly dead when he found her, she was so weak from starvation that she couldn't stand. She'd been covered in ice and wounds, likely from other wolves or coyotes, and for days he'd wondered whether it would have been kinder to put her out of her misery instead of nurse her back to health. But she'd survived, and it hadn't taken him long to figure out that she wasn't normal. For a while he thought she might be a skinwalker like himself, able to shift form into that of an animal. It would explain why, even though she was at least 12 years old, she possessed the physique and energy of a yearling wolf. The problem with that particular theory was that, as far as he knew, skinwalkers couldn't remain in animal form for more than a few hours. Not even Lobo, who was an extremely powerful skinwalker, perhaps the most powerful ever to have existed, could maintain a morph for more than a day, and even then the form he chose had a lot to do with how long he could remain in the transformed body. There was, he supposed, another explanation for Tehya's uniqueness and the image of the woman. Within the dank underground walls of moonbound headquarters, he'd been an orphan, raised on tales of vampires whose totem animals could take physical form, and it was said that the vampire who was linked to the animal could communicate through it. If so, and Tehya was one of these physical totem animals, her vampire counterpart could be anywhere in the world. She might even be a slave in some human's household. The idea that the female Tehya projected into his mind was a slave made him snarl viciously enough for Tehya to back away, her ears drooping. "That wasn't for you," he said, giving her another ruffle on the head. Transgression forgiven, she wagged her tail and bowed playfully, doing her best to entice him into a run. What the hell? They could run while he searched for whoever had fired the weapon. Grinning, he closed his eyes and concentrated, and a moment later the familiar burn of his muscles stretching and contracting began. Pain racked him, and blackness stole his vision as his bones broke and reformed and his skin sprouted fur. Gradually the pain faded, and he opened his canine eyes to find a different view of the world. Tehya nipped his furry shoulder and took off at full speed, ears pinned to her skull, tail streaming behind her. Reveling in his black-furred wolf body, he chased after her, his tail high, his giant paws digging into the soft, moist earth. Elation sang through him. This was what he lived for, the sheer joy of the wind in his face, and a friend to keep him company. It would be even better if I had a female two-legged friend, too. He stumbled like a cub learning to use its legs, and he swore Tehya laughed. As she should. He wasn't cut out to be with other people, and he had no business having those kind of thoughts. He was too dangerous, and no one let him forget that. Tehya slowed to snatch up a stick to tease him with, and after a few playful attempts to take the stick from her, he let go of his regrets and surrendered to the simple life he'd learned to love since Tehya entered his world as an emaciated, half-frozen wretch more than a decade ago. They ran for miles, chasing